Hello, my name is Vesa Juvonen, and in this video we'll have a look on how to get started with Office 365 Public CDN, the Developer Preview Edition. And this is something which we're now providing as a developer preview capability for you to take granted within your customizations and within your sites within a SharePoint Online. And the whole point of the Office 365 Public CDN is that you are able to take granted of the content delivery network for storing your static files, so like CSS files, JavaScript files, and PNG files or image files in general, without the additional burden of actually configuring a CDN, for example, in Microsoft Azure. So only thing what you need to do is select a location within your Office 365 tenant and enable the CDN capability based on that location. We'll walk through the steps within this video and we'll talk about the impact of those chosen steps. So in this case, I'm going to use my root site within my test site collection. And in this case, I've already created one library, which I'm going to use as my CDN endpoint. So you need to actually decide where you're going to store your assets, which will get then published, so to say, using the content delivery network capability. I'm using the classic layout here, and it doesn't really matter as long as you configure or the configuration itself is done in a PowerShell. So in my CDN folder, I'm going to actually drag and drop to assets. So I'm going to jump on my images folder and let's get this PNB assets within the CDN folder. So I've decided now share or create a CDN folder within my root tenant, and that's going to be the location which will get published using the content delivery network capability. During the developer preview, these assets will be published for anonymous access, so you need to kind of be aware that you're not sharing any confidential information. We're looking into a few additional scenarios in the future, but this is the default behavior when we get started with the developer preview. Good. So I have my site, I have my assets within the CDN folder, and then we need to get actually started on configuring this functionality. So let's move to PowerShell. So in PowerShell, you have to have the SharePoint Online Management Shell, the August 2016 release or a newer version, so that these needed commandlets are available for you to configure. So first of all, I'm going to actually execute or connect to my SharePoint Online. So let's actually sign in with my tenant administrative rights, so I can actually access the tenant object as well. So this is controlled with the tenant permissions, so you need to actually have tenant access rights to enable the capability within your tenant. And now that we are signed in, we can actually get the current settings of the tenant related on the CDN and related. Obviously, it will give us additional settings as well. So now if I scroll down in my output, I can actually see that we have these three new capabilities. Let's switch the color, which are CDN, public CDN enabled, which is by default is false. So you need to explicitly enable this capability. We have public CDN allowed file types, and there's a default set of static file types which you can share using the CDN. And then we have public CDN origins, and this is essentially the list of locations within your tenant which are being shared using the CDN. So that CDN folder or the library which we created, or it could be a folder within a library as well. We need to get that identity listed in here, and obviously we need to switch the functionality to be enabled. And this is relatively easy with the new PowerShell commandlets. So first of all, let's actually update that one. We're gonna set the SPO tenant public CDN enabled value to true. So let's execute that one, and the setting has been switched to true relatively fast. If you need to modify the allowed file types, you can do that as well. So the default settings is for the static files. You can modify the collection if needed, and that's up to your own preference. And then we need to actually define what is our public CDN origin. So what is the location, the library or a folder which will contain our assets, which we will actually get published using the CDN capability. And in our case, it was the CDN folder within the root of my test tenant. So let's actually add that one in there. So let's execute that one. So that's going to be then adding that library to be shared within the CDN. And we are getting this warning. Let's actually switch the color, which is essentially explicitly saying that we're adding a new CDN origin. So, and that is the URL. Are you sure about that one? And the answer in our case is yes, we are. And after that, anything within that folder will be actually accessible by using the CDN. There is a small delay on getting that enabled because the CDN synchronization will take a while, which is a maximum 15 minutes. It really slightly depends on the timing when you're doing that. You can also see in the PowerShell that we are actually showing clearly the warning. So that means that any of the static assets are being accessed right now in the developer preview anonymously using that endpoint. So you essentially need to be aware of that. So the functionality is mainly targeted for example, images, logos, JavaScript files which do not contain confidential information. And we can obviously also confirm, if we run the get SPO public CDN origins, we can confirm that we got that entry correctly in the list of things. And there's one kind of a relevant fellow here, which is the ID. So using this ID, you can also remove the public CDN origin if needed. And we can see that right now that ID is referring to vesaj.sharepoint.com/CDN. Good. Now we have the CDN capability actually enabled. We already have 2 files within a CDN, but how do I actually get start using that within my UIs or within my customizations? First of all, you need to figure out what is the CDN URL, and we do provide a REST API to get that information, or let's say the prefix of the information. So if I actually go to my copy the URL, and that's obviously in the documentation as well, in the release blog post, and I'm going to actually go back on my session, and then I'm going to request that specific URL. Let's have a look on that specific URL. So there's my tenant name, there's a VTI bin, public CDN ASHX, the URL being for the item URL is that one. So that's the absolute URL for the SBPNP image, which I drag and drop to the CDN library in my root tenant or root site. Obviously, you can certainly use whatever site or site collection you prefer to host your CDN assets. So now if I request this URL, we can see certain results. So there's a few different options. So you might not actually get the public CDN URL immediately. It's again slightly depends. Slightly depends on the timing and how long does it actually take to get things moving. But we can now get a URL which is public CDN, SharePoint Online, Vesaj SharePoint, and that's the unique identifier of the origin, which we actually saw within our PowerShells as well. And then if we scroll back here, we can actually see that that's where the file name is. So now we can actually, that's the origin information, and just double checking that that we understand what it is. It is actually this identity what we're seeing in here. So using that information, I can then get that URL or the image, and I cannot actually by default request this in my tab. So I cannot verify this, and that's because we do have a referrer limitation on the CDN. And what I mean with that one is that because this request isn't coming from SharePoint.com, we are not actually serving that from the CDN. So the CDN is only to be used within the context of SharePoint.com, within your SharePoint Online context. So how do we then use that? Well, we actually create, we reference the information or the image directly within the SharePoint Online. So within the SharePoint.com address. That could be a JavaScript file once again, or it could be an image, and so on. So let's actually create a page. I'm not actually going to create a classic page just for the clarity. So let's not go to the site assets. Let's go one step back. I'm going to go to site pages, and within my site pages, I'm going to actually create a new classic page, and let's call this CDN demo. And now the page is actually created. I'm going to actually add an image and adding the picture from address. And then if I actually paste in that full address to the CDN image, I can get the image visible after a while, so that the whole thing is properly then rendered. Let's actually copy that one more time. Oop. Actually, it's this one in here. Copy that and update that information that it's certainly properly aligned within our image. And like mentioned, there is a up to 15 minutes delay on getting that image available. So you either get it immediately available, or it will refresh after a while. And since it's not actually there yet, let's pause the video until the CDN has been refreshed. So I'm going to actually show you how the URL is behaving. And now that was actually quite fast just after we paused the video. So now if I refresh the page, we can see that the image is coming properly on the page as well. And just showing you that I'm actually not cheating. So let's actually copy that URL once again on the URL. We're able to see that it's the same URL which we actually got from our REST endpoint. So we're able to then pinpoint to that SP, PNP, PNG file. So how would I then actually get the other URLs? Well, the key point here is that you are able to now use that prefix to pinpoint the other the files within the CDN endpoint. So let's actually go to that CDN folder. In the root side of my site collection, we created the CDN folder, which is now hosting 2 files. The other file here was the pnpdude.png. So let's actually add that one here as well. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to actually copy that image URL, and then I'm going to add a new image on the page. So from address, paste that one in, and it was pnpdude. So this way I can actually build the static URLs or the needed URLs just by using that previously collected prefix, or like mentioned, alternatively, I can just use the right URL and then combine that with the identity and then with the URL of the image, and we get all of the stuff available, all of the images and static assets, including JavaScript files, available from the CDN. So there we go. Let's just copy image address, and double checking that one. You are able to see that it's actually coming from the public cdn.sharepointonline.com. My tenant address, that's the unique endpoint of the CDN with a library which is shared, and that is the image which we are sharing there. And that's it. That's what we wanted to actually quickly show around this one. So really enabling the capability and getting started with the capability is super easy. And after this one, your files are being served from the CDN. And if you do any updates on for example, on these images or JavaScript files, the CDN will automatically understand that the file has been changed, and it will reflect the changes within the URL. So you don't actually need to do the caching and the serving of the files and refreshing of the file content, including JavaScript files, is being done automatically. And that's a great improvement and great capability for you to version or update and maintain your existing customizations. But like mentioned, pretty much really simple setup, a few different PowerShells on the tenant level, and you're good to go. And after that, you can take advantage of the CDN, worldwide CDN endpoints to serve your content in a more performant way within your SharePoint sites, within a publishing sites, within a SharePoint collaboration sites. Really doesn't matter, as long as the URL is .sharepoint.com. Everything will work properly. Thank you for this one, and hopefully you find this useful.